Hey, everybody. We are back with another Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Avenue 9. You can find us at avenue9.com. Very special guest this week. Lisa Oda is founder at HiveStir. She's also director of AI at Infinite Marketing. And we're all talking about marketing buzz this week. So I've done a lot of AI episodes where we've talked about data and robots and all kinds of crazy things that are going on. This time, we're talking into the marketing tactics and how you can really use this day to day. So I am so glad you're here, Lisa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We like to start with the human first part. So I already know from talking to you a little bit that you feel the same way about marketing, that we need to put our human people and energy and creativity in first. But what does human first mean to you?
Well, human first definitely means, and I think we all say this, thinking about the end user whenever you're creating anything with marketing in mind. So, as you start to think about the AI piece, you still need to remember that somebody or something or someone is going to be at the end of that message. So whether you're creating content for search results, whether you're creating content for somebody who's going through your life cycle marketing, you definitely have to keep that in mind. And, it is tempting to look at a tool or a platform and kind of just plug in a couple things. We've all done it. And, sit back and say like, oh, look at this great content. I do think as, more and more people or more marketers leverage that, it's the ante for everyone, right? So everybody has to become a little bit better at differentiating the content, a little bit snappier, a little bit better at like tuning into that customer, because the end result is going to be that people are going to expect more personalization and expect, better optimized content. So I think that's a long answer to a short question, but really, I think you still have to keep in mind the principles of marketing and who you're delivering this or whoever you're creating this piece for.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you're a very accomplished marketer. We're talking about going all the way back to eBay and One King's Lane and Upwork and stuff. So you've had quite a successful career. And I think that as I see this, the tools really allow more maybe bad marketing, or even at this point, average to above average marketing. But I think there's still room for exceptional marketers and creatives. And we've kind of seen that happening throughout our culture anyway. When there was 4 TV channels, the stuff on there, the people had to be the best of the best in order to get a show, but maybe the shows weren't the best. And then you get cable, you got 100 channels, and then we get the internet and YouTube. Well, now there's millions of creators. We really see typically more bad stuff, but the really top marketers and creators seem to still rise to the top. There's still opportunities for people. But what have you seen the big changes in industry and marketing over the last 2 years?
Well, for sure, marketers are the heaviest adopters of AI. It's kind of not a surprise. I think it's before like the folks I think it's IT is second, but marketers have been barreling into the AI space, which is going to make everybody more productive. You're going to, again, have more content coming out, which I think, is great. And to your point, yes, you could have a marketer who's maybe not as experienced, and this is going to elevate. I was thinking earlier about one of your earlier podcasts where somebody said, is this like the Terminator or is it the Iron Man, right? How do you want to think about this? Is this going to be a bot who's going to come in and take over? Or is it going to be that cape that you're going to put on top and it's going to allow you to fly and create that magic? And I think, for the good marketers are looking at it as more of the Iron Man, like, hey, this is going to allow me to fly around and be the superhero. And, as I have stepped into this director of AI role at Infinite Marketing, I'm finding that that's the case, right? If I do my homework right, if I don't take the lazy way out and just plug a couple things in and expect amazing stuff, if I do my research and I, fact check it and make sure that it's authentic and I sprinkle my magic on top, I think that's when you get the best results. I think the smart marketers are going to do more of that because it takes a couple more cycles. You have to do a little bit more copy and paste, but that's where the magic or the outcomes really shine through.
I agree with you. The Iron Man analogy is my absolute favorite for what I'm trying to do here with Avenue 9, but I'm also a really big nerd. So I think what you said there is exactly right too, that I think if we slow down, we can skip the spammy part. We don't have to just use these tools to blast more messages and more junk out there. Smart marketers still realize that even if you use this tool and you go back and forth on a few edits and you take time to put thought into your outline before you and write a really good prompt before you put it into AI, you go back and forth with AI a couple times, and then you still edit the output before you publish.
Yep.
It's a lot of work, but it's also way less work than what we had to do just 5 years ago to do the exact same thing. And we could still do it 10 times faster and create better outcomes than what was possible. So for me, it's really exciting opportunities to make some really cool stuff really fast. And then I found it best for like repurposing. We've all been frustrated. I'm sure you have in your career where it's like, what do we need? Another social media channel? Like I don't have time for TikTok or Blue Sky. We have this already. Like I don't, but if I can now use AI to kind of take what I wrote for LinkedIn, rewrite it for Blue Sky, or create this podcast clip for TikTok, all of a sudden that's saving me a ton of time and effort. That's not really a human job. I'm not adding a whole lot of creativity by repurposing content. So let the AI do that heavy lifting.
I definitely think so. Totally 100% agree with you. I think when it comes to AI for the marketers, the ability to kind of remove some of those repetitive tasks to get to the things that are higher value. So you mentioned like some of the things in my background that I've worked on. I was going through some of my archives, and in 2019, I produced the human approach to AI for Upwork. And I went back and reread that like a week ago or so. And it's all about, AI isn't necessarily going to take people's jobs. It's going to make you think differently about how you approach tasks. So tasks within those jobs, and then to think about which tasks would you give to AI, maybe writing those repetitive social posts versus, which ones would you give to like a human? Maybe that's the content strategy or the higher level like content framework. And I think that is, to me, when I reread that, I was like, whoa, we wrote this in 2019, but it's still as relevant then as it is today.
You were way ahead of the game there, certainly on AI, but I've kind of seen the same thing happening in my approach. For me, it was in social media. I wrote a book on LinkedIn called LinkedIn, the Sandler Way. And it was just all about like, how do we take a human approach to social media? Because then everybody was like, oh, we have these feeds that we can cram full of stuff. And hopefully if we get enough followers, someday somebody will buy from us. And we're like, maybe that's not the best approach. Maybe we can take a direct, kind of human approach, even though I didn't use that term back then. It was really like, how do we focus on engagement and not just like creation and just throwing up content everywhere, hoping that somebody pays attention to it. What are some of your favorite AI tools for marketers right now as we talk at the beginning of 2025?
I would say I have a bunch of tools. You and I talked about this before we started this podcast. I'm a bit of a junkie. I keep like subscribing to things because there's just so much cool stuff out there. So I've got kind of the same probably suite that many people have, the Claudes, the ChatGPTs. I like Perplexity simply because, you can get that more relevant real-time information. And then, the whole host of gammas. I'm exploring Jasper for agency. Oops, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but I will. This is not an endorsement, but those are just a few smattering. That's a smattering of the tools that I'm using today. And I tend to use a lot of these tools together. So, I'll often start my prompting with Claude, who's kind of more of the thinker. And I will go through this, sort of exercise of like, hey, let's develop a prompt for XYZ. So today it was like, let's develop a prompt for an industry digest that can come out every single week through ChatGPT, because as you
Oh,
may or
cool.
may not be aware, ChatGPT has tasks now. So I'm testing out, okay, if I put together this digest that's weekly or semi-monthly, can ChatGPT run it every, period and then send it to my email? And so Claude and I went back and forth today on this prompt, which was pretty lengthy. And then we came back and we're like, oh, okay, let's shorten it. So we shortened it and then we threw it into ChatGPT. I also threw it into Perplexity, brought those two together, and then brought it back into Claude to ask to condense all of it into a shorter, kind of more readable, digestible digest, if you will. So that's kind of when I look at the tools that I work across. I have several, and then I usually they all come in together. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I use ChatGPT to fact check because I wanted to make sure all the information that came together was accurate. So,
Yeah.
that was like 3 tools. And then if I threw it into Gamma for presentation purposes, you'd have 4. So
Yeah, I am very similar. I heard 2 things there. One is the process that you were talking about. 2 is you keep using we. And I love that because this should be a collaborator, right? That there's very few things that probably just us as the human should do anymore without anything. I'm a bad speller and grammar person. I'm a little dyslexic. So I don't write anything without Grammarly or some sort of AI fact checker and grammar
it's
checker on
making
it
us
and
all
stuff, right?
smarter.
So it's a we for sure. And then this prompt, it isn't just setting up the robot to go do it either. There's very few tasks that are going to be completely automated. And then once it is, maybe with that regular newsletter, you're still seeing what comes from the newsletter and you're checking it and you're rewriting it and you're putting it into Gamma. I wanted to highlight what you said too. For me, I'm doing a lot of podcasting and stuff, or even recording internal meetings where Zoom's AI is really great at meeting summaries. So if I do a training session or an internal meeting or some sort of strategy session, take that AI summary, and then I can put that into ChatGPT and have it rewrite maybe a follow-up email or create some social media posts out of the top takeaways from
Yes.
the podcast, or all kinds of stuff. The Gamma one is my favorite. I've been waiting for something, and they've kind of been promising. I think even Microsoft promised a few years ago of like, oh, it just makes a presentation deck for you. If you're watching this and you haven't seen Gamma yet, gamma.app, you can paste an outline in there and it will build, once you build out your brand templates and everything, just a perfect PowerPoint presentation, generate the images and everything, and literally saves hours off of your time. So if you're
Yeah.
just thinking about, even for internal meetings or for salespeople, you take the call recording, you take the next steps, you schedule your follow-up tasks, you can take those pain points and put them into a PowerPoint in Gamma really quick. And for me, podcast post-production that used to take 4 or 5 hours takes maybe 45 minutes instead. And I think it should be the same for salespeople. But I love that you're stacking these apps together because I think that's important. And I think people are waiting for this virtual assistant that you can kind of do with, Google or Siri. They're not there yet. You can't just be like, hey, Google, do my sales presentation for me and expect it to do anything.
Isn't Gamma crazy?
Yeah.
We'll talk about Gamma a bunch here, but
Yeah.
when you see it real time creating that presentation, I think here's what's cool about the tools in general. Somebody said this recently to me, which is, it's not necessarily again going to replace the work that you're doing. It just creates a more focused you, and I feel like that's true. Like, think the AI capabilities and the tools and the things, it doesn't mean that you're not going to create your own presentation going forward. Because when I do use Gamma, I'll take a lot of that information I pull together from my prompting and my, like queries to ChatGPT, Perplexity, etc. And then I'll format it and stick it into Gamma so that I get something that comes back out. But I think the focusing part is really focusing on what are the priority messages here? How do we pull this together so that whoever is going to get it has the most relevant information? And, I don't spend as much time sort of focused on like, is that color right? Or is that shape in the right place? Like I would have done when putting together a presentation every day. So you know, it helps me focus a little bit more on the priorities. And then I can kind of blow through things much faster and the output is much better, or at least I believe it's much better.
I think it is. I mean, even the presentation formats and stuff are cooler for me. And then we are doing a love fest here for a second, so we'll find another tool, but or something to talk about. But Gamma has a great image creator where you can use all the different models. So even if you just log in and say, "Hey, I need an image for this blog post, and I want to do photorealistic, or I want to do a fantasy anime format, or I want to use Sora versus a different model," I can use all kinds of different models in there and create some images, and it'll give you 3 different options, and you're like, "Oh, this one's it. Cool, got it." And I love that you're talking about cross-platform. I've been recently using ChatGPT to write my image prompts for the podcast or the blog post. So paste the blog post in there and say, write an image prompt for generating a blog post image, a feature image for this blog. Then copy and paste that into Gamma's image creator. And all of a sudden it's like they're doing the heavy lifting and all the typing, and I'm just the editor. It's like having the best, personal assistant you've ever had, or marketing assistant you've ever had. Go find me an image for whatever this is. And it comes back with some really great options.
I think that's smart. Now, if you were to layer on the tasks feature in GPT, then you might be able to say, hey, every week create, these 5 topics and the prompts that go along for images, and then email it to me once a week so that I'm ready to go on a Monday with, these are the 5 blog topics or podcast topics that I want to cover.
Yeah.
And then I thought, we should remember to mention some of the other tools, like multimodal tools like Canva, which have a wealth of capabilities beyond just kind of the standard people think of, the image generation, but the ability to create your social image in there and then schedule it and connect it to your social platforms and then schedule it. And so there's some pretty cool stuff going on there that I think, is, as we think about the future, is definitely going to probably grow and, evolve as those companies grow and evolve. Oh, and Midjourney as well too. Sorry, that's my last one.
Yeah, the video. Well, you made me think of a couple, and I'm gonna have to ask you whether you subscribe to more AI tools or content subscriptions, Netflix streaming services and stuff. For me, I'm down to just one, so I don't actually do that many streaming services anymore. But you reminded me that I use Elementor in WordPress and stuff for my website too, and they have a new AI generator. I think it uses OpenAI, but just on a page, you're making a landing page, and it's like, oh, give me some ideas for this title, or help me write these, 4 bullet points for this landing page. And man, the amount of time that you're saving is incredible compared to what we used to do.
Yeah.
I, started out in my career where I was handwriting the HTML code to build the website, to now have all of that done, and even layouts. You can say, like, give me a 3-column layout, and it'll build it in WordPress for you, and then give you placeholders for titles and stuff. It's really a cool time to be alive and a cool time to be a marketer, because I think in a world when you can make anything, the question becomes, like, what are you going to make? What's your strategy? How creative can you be? How cool can you make something, or how good are you at relating to the audience and creating something that anybody is ever going to want to read, watch, or listen to?
I would agree. When you were just talking about WordPress and the capabilities within it, I had a similar experience with Wix while building out my website, and the ability to have that extra helping hand in terms of, like, what's the meta description for this particular section? Can you take a look at this copy and kind of finesse it real time within the tool? I probably in a past life would have spent days going back and forth on that stuff and making sure that the copy was right and making sure everything tied together. And I think I got it done in a day. I ended up with a slight glitch on something, and I went and asked Claude, hey, what's going on here? And Claude came back and said, do you want me to write the code for you? And I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
sure. As long as you don't blow up my website. So yeah, it's crazy and fun.
I think so too. And I'm going to ask you whether you think SEO is dead and where we go from here. But I found that it's really great at doing some of those tasks with clear limitations. So if I have already recorded the podcast, I can ask ChatGPT to give me a comma separated list of the top 20 keywords I should tag in this post, or put in the SEO, or write an SEO optimized meta description for this, or give me a 250 character tweet about this that I've already created. And all of a sudden now I'm not wasting that time of like trying to write and rewrite and how many words do I have, and guessing about what keywords I'm stuffing. It can do all the research and say, what are the most popular hashtags for the social media posts, and just copy and paste those right in, and then save me a ton of time. I love that. So what's your take on where we go from here on SEO, and is there an AIO? Is there a way to optimize to get listed in Perplexity, or what do you think maybe are the more interesting channels and the less interesting channels going forward?
Well, so this comes up quite often. I just recently took a class, and we talked about that as one of our kind of sidebar questions. I actually think, when it comes to SEO, and this goes back to the beginning of our conversation, quality content and making sure that it's factual and authentic and accurate and all that stuff is still the key, right? Because that content is still going to rise to the top. It's probably more important as we go forward. And some of the tools now have attribution. So I think, when people want to dig further, there's the source there. So I think that's really important. I do think it's going to slightly change the game in terms of, how people search for things, because now they're basically asking a question that they want answered. And sometimes the information is going to come back much quicker and differently in one of the AI tools. But I do think that the content itself is still going to be key and very relevant. I talked to somebody recently. There's a guy who, Andrew Shotland, who has a company called SEO Local. And we had this conversation a while ago, and he was like, hey, we do see that impressions are still pretty good. And, you're going to start to see a little bit more of maybe a little bit of that drop off in engagement, but, you're still going to have like a relevant stream of traffic coming in that's going to be valuable. So I think it's just going to be a little bit, it's not going to be, how should I say this? As more content bursts onto the landscape, that's where it is going to be important that you have that quality content to kind of rise above. So I don't think the game is fully changed, but I think people are going to shift their behavior for sure. I know I have.
Yeah, I have too. I think there is probably use cases where I am still using the Google results if I'm looking for a restaurant near me or something like that with a hyper local focus.
Yes.
Answers to fact questions and how-tos and stuff. I think those are gone. I do think that you're right. The best lesson here is that human first one again, that the best SEO was always quality content that people linked to and shared and stuff. And so that continues to be the benchmark. But I kind of disagree a little bit. I just had another podcast guest on a couple of weeks ago that was talking that like 50% of all internet traffic is robots now. And so while they still might be seeing clicks and impressions on their websites, if you look at the hits, those aren't real humans anymore. And I think that's going to continue to get worse. And so that might be why the engagement is dropping and stuff too, is you can't get engagement from a robot. You can't get comments and posts and likes and stuff as much anymore. I think that'll continue to be harder, but we'll see how all that shakes out. What do you think are the biggest opportunities going forward here in the foreseeable future? So let's start short term here in 2025. What do you think is the most interesting channel for marketers?
For interesting channel in terms of like usage of AI?
Or just getting results this year. You got to drive leads, make sales this year. Where would you spend your time?
Well, I definitely think if you are a smart marketer, you're going to look at the full journey and how to optimize along the way. And I think that's where you would definitely benefit from the capabilities that AI and some of the tools have. Maybe being able to fine tune that top of funnel content for whether it's for SEO or just more general thought leadership content. I think you can you can research much faster. You can create those industry digests and pull that content to the fore much quicker so that you can get into more of the consideration phase and then that final closing, sort of getting people in the door as a lead. So I think the smart marketers are going to look at how to leverage AI across that or throughout that funnel. And I think that's where you're going to really start to see the efficacy and the success. And, and then let's talk about the ability to optimize through better analytics, being able to get into the, so for example, in the course that I just took in December, which was that the AI for strategic content marketing, we went through an exercise where we created the strategy and then did the research and the tactics. But the piece that really spoke to me was we created AI companions once we did our persona research and highlighted these are the 2 to 3 personas we're going after, created the companions in ChatGPT, and then asked those personas to speak to me as though they were those people. And, so having that real-time feedback, like, what do you think about this? I've got this idea. What do you think, CEO, CMO, CTO, et cetera? And having that real-time feedback come back quicker, was for me really eye-opening, because then I didn't have to guess. And I ran a couple of ideas past and I got, really good sort of focus group type feedback. And I was like, okay, great. I can lock this up and move along. So,
that's really great. I heard two things there.
Yeah.
One, those custom GPTs are really cool for your own personas. And so if you're an agency like me, you can create a custom GPT for each one of your clients with their personas and their unique value propositions already in there and in their brand voice and assets and knowledge base and all that kind of stuff, so that what you're creating is already targeted. I think that's awesome. The persona work is great. The second thing I heard was kind of focusing on the people we know are humans, people already in your funnel. I think top of funnel continue to be a challenge, but if you've got people that are in your funnel at any point that have, attended a webinar or, signed up for an offer or interacted with the sales team, those people you should be really focusing on, because that they're humans, and we can do such a better job personalizing our messaging and, like you said, using our analytics and automations and sequences and workflows to just really hone in that for the highest conversions possible. That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, last one. It's the fun one. We're almost out of time here, so I got to ask you, if you look way out in the future, let's say like at least 5 years, but maybe 10, 15 years, where do you think it all shakes out? Do we have AI selling and marketing to AI? Are we all on the beach retired because AI has provided everything we need? What do you think the world of marketing or the world in general looks like if you play this out?
Whoa. Well, that's an interesting one. I'll tell you what my hope is. My hope is it goes back to the Terminator versus the Iron Man. I hope it's the Iron Man scenario where AI is kind of helping us become better focused individuals, and we can apply the knowledge and capability to things like like cancer research or mapping genomics, or sorry, I'm probably getting all my terms wrong, but things that truly add value to society. And that's my idealistic perspective. I think the tools and AI is evolving so quickly that it's really hard to predict. I think everything is going to get better and better, and I hope we use it better and better. And by the way, someone's still going to have to, I think, we're still going to have to make our own breakfast, maybe not. And we're still going to have to, like fix a dishwasher and
Samsung's releasing, refrigerators with AI built in them that are just going to see your ingredients in order. And who knows about making the food itself, but
hard to say.
We're definitely working towards that. I think the robots have come a long way. Have you seen the robots that can make breakfast and stuff now? They're getting better at it.
I have not, but I do know, I will share this last funny story. I had a conversation with ChatGPT today while I was building up my digest, and ChatGPT said something, and I said, "Oh, was that an intended pun?" And ChatGPT came back and said, no, but, and then went on a slew of puns. And it just, I mean, like every construction industry pun you could ever imagine. And I was like, whoa, I actually need to get back to work. And ChatGPT came back and said, you nailed it. And then just like continued on. And I was like, I gotta. So I think when you look in the future, like they're gonna become a little bit more, I wouldn't say humanistic, but kind of like,
I think it's going to be beyond what we can comprehend, really. And I'm excited that it's happening in our lifetime. It's
sure.
kind of funny to think that the future and Back to the Future was 10 years ago now, but we're finally getting to the point that it's going to look a little bit more like that, I think, in the next 10 to 15 years. That's fun. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and what you've been doing with AI marketing here on the podcast. How can we help you, or how can you help us here as we wrap it up?
I think, just let's share ideas and remember to be authentic and think about AI, using it in an ethical way and making sure that, we still apply our human creativity to the things that we do. And I think that is a help for everybody.
I love it. Again, we've been talking with Lisa Oda, founder at HiveStir. They're creating a marketing buzz all over the internet, and she is also director of AI at Infinite Marketing. Connect with her on LinkedIn, reach out, find them at the websites, infinitemarketing.com and .ca. There you go. Thank you for the correction. Find her at infinitemarketing.ca and also avenue9.com. You with any AI strategy for content marketing. You want to launch a podcast, write a book, engage a community. That's the kind of stuff that I love. Or just figuring out how we solve some problems for everybody. So until next time, keep going, keep learning, have fun with it, everybody. We'll see you.
Thank you.